In this lesson, we're going to look at loops. We're going to look at the different types of loops that are available within JavaScript. And essentially what loops do is they allow you to run or execute a block of code and checking to see if a condition is true. So there's a combination here of checking to see a comparison to see if something is true. And if it is true, then at that point, then we can break the loop. So we need to have a series of different values that are going to be showing up within this loop, where first of all we've got that condition, waiting to see if that condition is met, and also we have to have something dynamic happening where maybe we're incrementing a number in order to reach that condition and be able to break out of the loop. So always make sure when you are creating loops that you do have a way that it can actually break out of the loop. So let's take a look at, first we're going to look at the while statement, and we're going to look to see if x, and loops really do save you a lot of time. So if, for instance, you want to write out a bunch of values onto your web page, or if you wanted to increment or do some arithmetic, then it can run through and it can execute all of that information. So I'm going to set a at 1, and then I'm going to increment values of a all the way through the loop while x. So this is how many times we actually want to loop through. So if I wanted to loop through 20 different times, and while x is less than 20, then we could loop through and we could wait to hit that number. So let's do an increment here, because I did say that we need a way to break out of the loop. So I'm going to increment x there, and we also need to set a default value for x, so essentially a starting point for x. So essentially what's going to happen here is x is going to increment and until it reaches 20. Once it reaches 20, that'll break out of the loop. So we need to also add in something to happen. So right now we've been using console log, so we're going to do that, the same thing here. So we're going to say a and we'll just leave a space there, and we'll show you the value of x that's incrementing, and so on. So we could, if we were only using that one variable, we could have used a there to contain that loop as well. But for instance, if we want to do quite a bit more with a, then we could do it this way as well. So we could also increment a, or we could multiply a equals a times 5, and then we could increment a. And there's a whole bunch of things that we can do here. So this is just so that we have something different happening and something going on within those values. So we see that in order to work that out, we see that a continues to increase. We continue to multiply it by 5. And remember, a is global. So we're containing that value globally. So that's why we've got these drastic increases, because every time we're hitting that loop, it's incrementing a until we reach a fairly large number there. And we see the value of x starts at 0, loops all the way through till 19, and once it hits this condition, so once x hits a value of 20, the loop stops and we break out of it, and the script will continue. So that block of code gets executed out. We can also do a do while statement. So this works in a similar fashion. So this would be a do, and essentially it can do all of this, and while, you can place the while at the end. So this one really isn't really that commonly used, so you don't really see users doing this one very often, but let's just reset those values there. And I should be initiating these with var, so declaring them there. So let's open up our browser, take a look and see what happens. So we've got, essentially we do run through that first while loop, and then we run through the do while loop, and essentially getting that same result. So we do have that ability to do it either way, but most commonly you don't really see do and while being used within this fashion. You do see while being used within this type of format more often. So in the next lesson, we're going to look at probably the most common way of looping, and we're going to look at the for loop. So that's coming up in the next lesson.